This is Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss our memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Gif.
Are you trying to be steamy, Pete? Or
I'm being very steamy. Can't you
Oh,
tell?
he's steamy.
You sound
No, I
like a
couldn't.
sex line.
Well, you
Really don't
did
come
get
off
it. You did identify. Are you trying to be steamy? And that's what I was going for. So, points for
Nailed
you. Sure, listeners are already turned on.
Oh, yes. So,
As long as they don't
we're
turn off,
going
we'll be
back.
okay.
41 years tonight. We did a bunch of drafts last week. We even had some good memories from that time when we were how old? 7?
Yeah,
7.
something like that.
7? Speaking of steamy, 7.
So I think the topic is appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Pete,
steamy topic for 7-year-olds.
we are going to talk about a steamy movie, and we're going to pick some steamy scenes tonight. What are we talking about, Pete?
Tonight we are talking about Risky Business. This was one of the movies that, Brad, I'm sure you had at your video store. It was in all the video stores, and I think there might have been a network TV version that was edited out heavily, but this was one that just seemed like it was always around and always on all the time. And I remember seeing, I don't know exactly when the first time that I saw this movie was, but I couldn't have been old enough to see it. I know that, like the actual unedited version, because it was pretty steamy. That's for sure. I am talking about probably the first big Tom Cruise movie. He had a couple movies before this, but this was the first one that I can really remember him in. We're going to be talking about Risky Business tonight. Just a great movie. All around. I do remember, like, as a kid, probably couldn't have been more than 10 or 11, having seen the movie and thinking this is a fun movie. It's a really good movie. It had some similarities as you get a little, this movie came out after. It had some similarities, I remember thinking, to like Ferris Bueller's Day Off or some of those other kind of movies like that, but it was different. It wasn't like a full-on comedy. I'm not sure what exactly genre. Would you consider this a comedy?
That was one of my big questions tonight is how do you define this movie and kind of the audience for it too? Because you think of it as a comedy, but it really isn't very funny. And I wouldn't call it, it's not like any of the comedies we think of in the 80s comedy, funny comedies.
I would say
definitely some comedic part. Yeah, a dark comedy probably
it is
the
a dark
appropriate way. Some moments that are a little bit far-fetched, and you had Booger in it, and so you can't go wrong when you have him in it.
That
Booger
guy, man.
and Belky. You had Belky too.
And Belky, yes, that's correct.
Booger goes from Risky Business to Revenge of the Nerds to Better Off Dead 3 years in a row. Man, that is just a run, and it's too bad he didn't just keep going from there into something else great.
Well, we
this
talked
is 2
about him
weeks
in
in a row.
Dodgeball.
We talked about him Dodgeball last week, right?
He made an appearance. Yeah. No, he's been around, but these were like mostly kind of like starring roles, like not the lead, but one of the bigger characters.
He's a great sidekick.
Yep.
To the in these teen movies, he is the perfect sidekick because he's always the loyal best friend that is trying to push you a little further. And trying to, when you think of a coming of age movie and somebody like growing into that next role, becoming an adult, he's the one that's always there pushing you to that next level.
Yeah, just
Gifford, what say you?
He's the one prodding you on. What I love is that he's always going to be referred to as Booger. We do it here. I mean, that's such an iconic role from Revenge of the Nerds that even though, like Brad said, he was in 3 pretty big movies 3 years in a row, he's always going to be identified as Booger. Pete, I'm with you on this. I think the first time I saw this was with the TV edit. And I'm guessing I probably would have seen it, like 10, 11 years old, somewhere around in there. And you could tell at that point that, oh, yes, there is editing going on here. And I would like to see this movie in its original form. But yeah, I would have probably, I'm sure I would have seen it after Top Gun, which would have came out 3 years later. But as you said, this is like everybody kind of considers this as Cruise's breakout role. He had been in, I think, Taps a few years before this, but this was him as the leading man, the primary.
Outsiders and All the Right Moves.
All the Right Moves is the one I was thinking.
The Outsiders came out the same year, and All the Right Moves, I think, was the year after.
I thought that was before this.
No,
doesn't matter.
But anyway, this is him in his first leading man role, and he did such a great job in it. He does a great job of pulling off like the nervous, timid teenager in the beginning, and then just as they say, saying what the fuck and turning into this different person, a little more confident, but still keeps that heart, I think, through the movie. So it's a fun watch. Not one of the movies that I always go back to, and I'll have a few comments on that once we get into it.
This is one. So we had HBO, and so this is one of those movies that I was able to see as a very young kid on HBO. But I only saw it probably a couple of times at a very young age. And I mean, the train scene was seared in my head. Like I remember that scene happening. I didn't remember a whole lot else about like the plot of it other than just this, that he's in trouble and there's this girl and everything. So I really look forward to watching it again this time. And my wife watched it with me, and I thought she had seen it, but I found out towards the end she hadn't seen it because she was a little confused by some things. And so she enjoyed it watching it for the first time. So we talked a little bit about the genre, and it's a dark comedy, I guess, but it's a satire. And one of the things I read is they compared it to The Graduate, and I guess I can see that too. It's similar time in his life and just kind of turning away from things. I did compare this to myself, like thinking I could see this kid at the end of this movie, speaking of a satire and a dark comedy, growing up to be Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. Like that's the progression for this kid at the end of the 80s from where he started here early in the 80s. I thought that was interesting in my head. It was loved by critics. It was a big movie. And one thing, I didn't even write the name down. This director, I don't know who this director was and what happened to him. He did not do very much. And considering it was a pretty big movie and very successful, you'd think that the director would be better known and gone on to more stuff. But
written and directed by Paul Brickman.
But so critically acclaimed. It had a budget of $6.2 million and made over $60 million. The Rotten Tomatoes are 92% by critics, and I'm surprised only 73 by audience, which sometimes the audience ones lately have really confused me. I don't understand how they're so different lately at the movies that I've looked at. So generally very well respected, a big hit all around in many ways, and of course it brought us Tom Cruise, as we know, and mostly love him today. So yeah, I was excited to watch it again, and it's been a whole long time since I've seen it.
Sure.
All right. I did write a little bit of a synopsis, if you don't mind. I'll read into it to kick off our episode and discussion. Let me clear my throat. All right. Here it is. Risky Business by Brian Peterson.
A book report in 3 parts.
Do you have that in a laminated folder?
All right, here we go. Risky Business is a movie that would fall under the category of coming-of-age hits. It follows the story of a young man named Joel, a high school senior grappling with the conflict between living his best life and preparing for college. As his parents head out of town for a trip, Joel immediately starts to break the rules set forth by his overly strict father. His best friend Miles, we call him Booger, immediately tries to convince him to hire an escort service, but Joel refuses because that would be too far. Miles calls anyway, claiming to be Joel, and hires the service. A bit later, a transvestite, not that there's anything wrong with that, arrives, but that's not exactly what Joel is looking for. So he pays her to leave. But the escort gives him the name and number of a girl named Lana, whom he might really like. Later on, his sexual curiosity gets the best of him, and he calls her over. She does her job very well. The next morning, Yes,
Yep.
and immediately. The next morning, a reality sets in and she wants to get paid $300 for her services. He doesn't have the cash on him, so he goes to the bank. When he returns, he finds that she is gone and has taken the valuable glass egg his parents had on the mantle. As he and Miles track her down to get the egg back, they encounter her abusive, quote, manager, aka pimp. She joins them, and after a chase, they are able to return home safely. Lana wants to stay with Joel, who understandably has difficulty trusting her. They work it out, though, but she starts to have friends over to the house for, quote, business. Lana and Joel are clearly becoming closer, and they go out for a night near the lake. After getting high together and talking about life, Joel's father's Porsche makes its way onto the pier and ultimately crashing into the water. To avoid getting in trouble, Joel needs a lot of money and he needs it fast. Along with Lana's help, they combine her talents with his business acumen, and they turn the house into a burlesque house for the night, bringing in loads of cash and easily enough to pay for the car. During the party, however, a representative from Princeton, where Joel hopes to attend college, arrives for an interview, and it goes poorly. Lana saves the day by ensuring the representative was entertained. In the end, Joel is able to pay for the car, get the house back in order, and was accepted to Princeton. And he now has a new girlfriend in Lana that is sure to be a part of his future. The end.
The end. Or is it? Did you end it like that?
I should have.
So I would like to add here that I watched this movie on VHS a couple nights ago. Well, I looked at
where
I
thought you were talking about like back in 1986 or something.
No, so I was looking at where it was available online, and I didn't have any of the services. So for some reason, we have this on VHS. It's a 75th anniversary Warner Brothers printing. So it's not like from like 1984 or whatever when they would have printed the original VHS. So I literally dusted off the VCR.
That's awesome.
Plugged it in to the high definition television. It looked god awful.
And you could find a connection that worked too, because most of the TVs you wouldn't be able to connect to a VCR.
No,
to.
I've got a TV that still has the RCA hookups.
I don't have a VCR anymore.
Well, I have one, and I was able to. And the craziest part of this, the batteries that were in the remote control still work. So I don't know how many years it's been.
What a story.
Since I used that VCR. And so that was kind of interesting.
That is awesome that you watched it on VHS. That makes me just so happy right now. I
did not think that batteries would be a part of our steamy discussion, but go on.
Well, it very well can be in a lot of cases.
Never mind. I
batteries make the steam.
So that was kind of fun to watch it that way. I mean, the picture was awful. I think part of that has to do
some of the scenes
with the fact that you're watching on a high definition television. I think if you had the old tube TV, it would look more like what we were used to growing up, just because it wouldn't be trying to make it high definition. But anyway, it was fun. It was cool to turn it on and watch it and go that route.
Well, I believe we rented it on Apple TV, and you don't need to have Apple TV to rent a movie on there. It's just an app anybody can go rent a movie on.
Yeah, but I would have to rent it, so I would have to pay for it. So this way I could watch it for free.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, okay. But I thought it wasn't about the cost. I thought you were saying you could not rent it on anything because you didn't have any of the services. But
no, I didn't pay for any of the services, so I would have to rent it. So I didn't want to do that because I'm frugal.
No, well,
I'm
I
like Joel.
Too. I have Apple TV. I still had to rent it. It's like that's what I'm saying. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Being frugal, you would not hire Lana, or you would?
Well, first off, let's get right into this here. So, honest to God, like that's what you do is you hire an escort to come to your parents' house. Like, there's no way. I mean, but he did. He ended up calling up Lana and having her come over.
That's right. We were called the first person.
Right.
Which, by the way, Pete, the word you used in your synopsis, I don't believe we use that anymore. I haven't heard that in years.
What word did I use?
But transvestite.
Oh,
Well,
I thought you were
wasn't-
saying call girl. I was like,
as
what
far
now?
as we know, I don't know. Does a transgender? It wasn't trans. She
Well,
wasn't,
I
don't
just
think
the
fully
description
transgender.
that I read online said that it was a cross dresser, but I don't know. Anyway, I'm just saying it was an
Okay.
interesting
All right.
so that I haven't heard in a long time. That's all.
So here's the thing. So
I meant no
he's-
offense by it.
I know you didn't mean any offense.
Okay.
One of the questions I had, so he's at home when this person shows up and he calls Miles, and Miles says he's not coming over because he's playing cards with the guys. Like, why doesn't Joel, he has an empty house. Why doesn't he have the guys over for a party? Like, I don't understand how he does have a party, but he'll call an escort service.
I'm not sure if this is why he wasn't with them or why he was home alone, but one thing also, Pete said he immediately started to like kind of break the rules. I don't think so. It took him a while. He was really trying to be the good boy first, and he wasn't going to do those things. And then once he got going, then he got going. But
I disagree. I disagree with that comment because one of the first things his father told him was, "Don't touch the stereo. Keep all the knobs exactly as they are." I was referring to the time he gets home and immediately cranks all the stereo controls up, and then that's when you get the famous
Brad's favorite song,
"Dancing in Your Underwear" scene.
I guess yes, that's technically breaking the. It's just such a minor rule, but I love that.
He was so strict though.
Joel, is this the way I left the equalizer?
Right.
You think back in the 80s, everybody had their stereo components and your equalizer, and just the way he said that was like, oh my God, this is a different time.
So here's a question I have on that. So the dad is nitpicky enough to notice the equalizer. You're telling me he's not going to notice the odometer on the car, and he's not going to notice that there's hard liquor and beer drank from the fridge. Like he sits down for dinner one night, pours himself a tall glass of, I don't know, whiskey and Coke. And then there's another scene with him and I think it was Barry, and they're just sitting in the kitchen and they're having beers.
I think that he will notice, but now that he got accepted to Princeton, the dad is going to be like, he doesn't care. He's so proud of him that he's going to overlook anything he did wrong because everything is still standing. The house didn't fall down, but he's just going to look past it.
But at that point, he wasn't accepted to Princeton, so that's the part where it's like,
I know.
Yeah.
What was interesting though, and we're not to the end of the movie yet, but it was like the mom all of a sudden became the controller because she noticed the crack in the egg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Going to the beginning too, we already brought up the genre. I think that one of the things I remember this about the movie very clearly too, from my watch, 35 years ago or whatever. The music in it is very memorable, and it comes across as so serious, not a comedy, but serious and dreamlike.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where even that first night when Lana came in, he's half asleep, and he hasn't really been very aggressive about anything yet. And so when he gets up and he just goes right at her, like I feel like you're supposed to almost wonder if he's in a dream at that point. And then, he's not. But I love the mood it sets with that dreamlike feel and the score. And I can't remember who they said that did the music for this movie, but
Tangerine Dream.
There's some really good songs in the movie, but the background score music like that, I love that feel to this movie, and it makes it so unique. To the point where that's one of the things I actually remembered from being a kid, seeing it.
Can we get into the security of the house from that scene? So she doesn't come in the front door. All of a sudden she comes through, maybe like the back door. Probably by the kitchen there, I think there was a door. But then when they start getting hot and heavy, the patio door just blows open. I mean, we got to take a look at the security of the doors in this house.
That patio board blowing open is more of that, like, wait a minute, is this a dream or not? Because it's like crazy. But I love that time because it's like, wow, this is going now.
This would
he's
not
about to blow.
This would not work in the Fear House.
No, doors just don't pop open in the Fear House for sure.
They had.
Then another thing from the early I want to talk about quick too. We talked about Booger a little bit, but Balky you brought up, Bronson Pinchot.
Sure.
I didn't remember him being in it. So when I saw his name before I watched it being in it, I'm like, okay, that's cool. But my whole life, he has seemed like somebody who's older than, like,
Okay.
He seemed like he's like 35, 40 years old all the time. Like I couldn't, like he's playing a high school kid. That just didn't, for me personally, that was like weird.
Sure.
Because I look at him as older. And actually, I'm going to say the same thing about Carrie Fisher next week. But those are two people that have always been terminally the same age to me for some reason. So seeing him play a kid was kind of weird.
Right. Yeah, but it's not like he seemed out of place. I thought he fit the role perfectly.
No, not at all.
And he probably is pretty close to the right age. For me, I'm like, wait a minute, he's not that young.
Right. Because Perfect Strangers couldn't have been too long after this. Like, what did that start?
Probably only like 3 years later. I think it started
84, 85, maybe.
Let's see here.
86, I think.
Hey, okay.
Yeah, that could be.
And then, of course, we haven't named her yet, but Rebecca De Mornay is, of course, Lana.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then the pimp, as you brought up, whatever you want to call him, I love that guy too, Joe Pantoliano. He's been in many good movies.
Joey Pants.
Yeah,
he's awesome.
He's in Memento, which is one of the best roles in Memento. He's great in that movie. And so I had forgotten he was in this too. But the one other character I wanted to bring up is the Princeton guy. Mm-hmm. Do you guys recognize him from?
I've seen him.
The 80s movie.
I was wondering what he was from. Oh, hold on. Was it like? Don't tell me.
Here it comes.
It was a License to Drive, right?
He's the dad in License to Drive.
License to Drive.
Oh, that's why I'm not familiar with that movie.
I know I've seen him in other stuff too, but that's.
And he always I get him mixed up with Martin Mull. I feel like this guy and Martin Mull look very similar. But
I could see that.
But he is the dad from License to Drive.
So you bring up Rebecca De Mornay. Maybe one of the reasons why I really didn't get that much into this movie as far as rewatching all of these nice scenes that she's in is I've really never found her that attractive. In doing research, I found out that this role was offered to Michelle Pfeiffer. Now, I got to tell you, if she would have been Lana, I would have been much more intimately familiar with this movie.
I will say, since we're doing this now, I was never huge into Rebecca De Mornay either, as like being somebody I was, but in this movie, she is very attractive. Like she is, I don't know.
And
Michelle Pfeiffer would be like the dream casting for this movie.
Yes, very much so.
She is also very young to be playing that role. She's only like 23 or 24 in this movie. Mm-hmm. So to be this like, really successful call girl, although I mean she's quite young, so she must have been through a lot to get to that point already.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Well, and Cruise is, 20 when he's 20. Actually playing the role.
And I read that they actually, to get ready for this role, they made him like get really cut, but then he ate a lot to like pudge back up to look like a high school kid. But I'm like, he's only 20. He looks as much like a high school kid as most people in the 80s movies. Like, look at Judd Nelson. So I never would have thought he was out of place, but he went through a whole physical thing to like look the part better for this movie. So I thought that was interesting too.
He's 2 years removed from being in high school. I mean, he's going to look like he's in high school.
Far off.
Right.
They're both very young for their, not for his role, but they're both very young actors playing these very mature parts here.
So watching this
before we move on, I do want to disagree with you. I thought Rebecca De Mornay was very, very sexy in this movie, in a smoldering way.
I agree,
in my opinion. So,
but like in subsequent things, I saw her, and she was never like one of my big crushes or anything. But I do agree in this movie, she is quite nice.
Right. Don't get me wrong.
Hand That Rocks the Cradle is another one that she was in.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't love that movie very much, and
Don't get me wrong. She is rather fetching in this movie, but it's not like top of the list. She's not on the laminated list. Let's just put it that way.
There you go. Not on the laminated list. Let's move on.
It almost adds a layer of realism to the movie, though. It's like if it's a supermodel, then it's like you're like, no way, this is too good to be true for this high school kid. But maybe it adds a little bit of a sense of reality to it.
A little more girl next door look.
Yeah. In a way.
That's what I think she does have a girl next door look because she is so young in this movie.
Right.
Anyway.
One of the things,
the big dance scene too.
Yeah. One of the things watching this back that I'm not a fan of, and again, they do a great job in the movie with it, but it just makes me kind of uncomfortable and angry, is how Joel just continually gets used by people in this movie. So like early on when he's hanging out with Barry, and they're going over their project for this young enterprisers. His buddy Glenn stops by with his girlfriend just to go have sex with her in an empty house. And then you see when Lana has her friend over at Joel's, like he's just there, like just takes it upon himself to show up at Joel's place, uninvited to, have sex with this, hooker. And like Lana, takes advantage of him. Guido takes advantage of him. Like he's trying his best to get out of this situation with this, call girl, and he's just getting put deeper and deeper, and just people are just using him.
He's a naive kid that has a lot of money, or his family does, and he's in a vulnerable position because his parents are gone. So that all makes sense that they would take that. Being
naive and everything. I thought it was really funny when he goes to get the money to pay her. It's a bond from Grandma and Grandpa.
Grandma and Grandpa. Yeah, that's exactly what they were envisioning him using
Grandpa
that for
the hooker.
Right.
That was a nice touch.
Oh my God.
But yeah, and they do, like, that's what I meant early on. I don't feel like he's trying to be bad or break the rules. But he keeps getting pushed and pushed until there's no turning back. And I love how there was a line, I think it was Booger, where he kept telling him to do stuff, and then when he wouldn't come over that night, he said, "What was that? All just a load of shit?" And he just goes, "Joel, that was a load of shit."
Yes.
That's like my favorite
way that he said it too. Yep, absolutely.
Like, duh, you are so naive, and that fits right into that.
Right.
I did have another moment in the movie that, by the way, I wanted to throw this in there that reminded me of Fear. Did you notice when he's in the school and he's in a hurry and he has to get out of there, the clock ticks backwards? Just had to throw that in there. It's another
time travel
movie.
Yeah, time jump. Right.
That counts, right?
Scene you brought up where the car goes in the water too, and I really don't buy it. Like, how is he going to get the car fixed to where the dad wouldn't notice or anything? But that is so nerve-wracking, watching that car roll and him trying. I mean, it's like I was sweating in that part. It is.
Well, and it's great how he gets.
It feels so bad for him because he hasn't done anything wrong yet, and he's it's just so frustrating to watch.
He did call a hooker,
right? And he is doing pot at that point too. Which
okay, he was a little beyond that.
Other than the drugs and the hookers,
he meant well.
Killed anybody yet?
I mean, all you're missing is Jason Voorhees to come by and kill him at this point now.
Okay.
But that's the thing. The other thing about that scene that's great is he gets the car stopped, and you have that moment of, oh, thank God, and then boom. So that was another thing about that, pointing out how people just kind of mistreat him is, so Lana's talking like, hey, let's get my friends together, get your friends together for, a couple days here until your parents come back, and we can make a lot of money, doing this. And he basically just goes, I'm really not too keen on that. And so she goes into the car to get her sweater. I think she accidentally knocks the car out of gear, but then locks the car. And so the car goes into the, like, she doesn't come to see if he's okay. Barry and the other girl came running to see if he's all right, but she's just gone. And it's like, just because he doesn't want to run a brothel with her, now she's like, okay, well, you're not worth my time, and kind of screws
that made
over
me
locking
think,
the car.
But she wanted to do it, and that's why I think it was deliberate that she put the car in neutral. And that's
even worse then.
It's like she had it plotted out in her head that she needed to come up with a way for him to need money, and that was it. I don't know. It was hard to tell, though.
Which goes to my point even more. People just using him, and and he can't get away from her. I mean, obviously he's an 18-year-old who's having sex nonstop with a professional. Like, obviously he's gonna want to stay with her.
So you've got the famous poster with the sunglasses, and so he keeps getting this, but then you eventually have the big turning point where now he is the man in charge, and he's smoking, and he's got the sunglasses, and like he just like that, he just figures it all out, and and he's quite good at it, which
and I love the Muddy Waters song. I think it's a Manish Boy is playing through that kind of the setup of the brothel. Like, we brought Barry in to be the treasurer. You know, I'm in charge of sales. You know, Lana's in charge of hospitality, and he's going around the streets talking to kids. He's got the sunglasses and he's smoking. And I just love that song in the background.
We skipped over a scene that I want to get back to, because there's a funny line that I had written down where he brings they get the car into the body shop, and they open the door, and it's like all this water just gushes out along with these fish and everything. The mechanic guy, or the guy, comes out and he goes, "So, who's the U-boat commander?"
Right. The other line from that scene that I like is Miles is sitting next to him, and he goes, "You okay? Do you need an aspirin? Does your father own a gun?"
So then, actually, a little bit before we get to the brothel, this is when I think he goes into the school and he tries to get an excused absence, and the school nurse is having none of his bullshit. And
his entire life falls apart at this point here.
Mm-hmm.
That's what turns him to the sunglasses guy.
Right,
this is reminiscent of Steve. This scene is like reminiscent of Steve Martin in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, when he can't rent the car and he just takes it all out on the person working.
When he grabs her by the collar, and he basically says, I've spent 4 years slaving away," and the nurse is looking at him, and all I'm thinking is, how many years has this poor woman been at this high school working? Like, 4 years is nothing, pal. Like, she's seen some shit working in that school, so
I think
she has no compassion for him at this moment.
This is the turning point for him, because this is when he comes out and he realizes he's got nothing to lose. And so that's when he's like, let's go for it. And then he asks his buddy for the bike. And then he goes back to Lana, and they set the whole thing up. And now we're at the brothel. By the way, his other friend, I think, was on Growing Pains. Like one of, not Boner, but the other, but
Glenn?
The other, was it Glenn with the kind of curly hair?
I didn't
Okay. Yeah. I think that he was Mike Seaver's other best friend besides Boner. But I know I've seen him in other things.
This is where the music gets great too, because at the party they're playing the Talking Heads and they're playing Prince, and then eventually you hear the Phil Collins song too when they're on the train, which I had forgotten that those two things were at the same time, because that's a pretty great. I mean, seems like an obvious song choice for that moment, but like, going back, it's like pretty cool. So.
Oh yeah,
I was really into the music. It was adding a lot to the movie at this point.
For sure.
Yeah. So now we do have the burlesque house that is up and running, and it's just a big party. And basically, you can show up with your money, and they will take you upstairs and show you a good time. And so, as you said earlier, Joel is the one in charge. He's got the sunglasses. But then this is where, I mean, it's a key point in the movie, but it is a little ridiculous too. It's like, what is the representative of Princeton actually coming to your house? Did they ever actually do that to interview you on site at your house?
The dad had it set up. Yeah, the dad.
What had to have been 9 p.m. on a Saturday night or something like that, or whenever this was.
Yeah,
it's like, okay,
it could have been like 7. It wasn't necessarily that late, so
it still seemed a little bit. Yeah.
Anyway, it was interesting to watch him stand there and wait and like
check out what's going on.
React to all this amazing stuff going on around him, and even when he's talking to Joel, like he tries to keep like a straight face and everything.
Yeah, he doesn't react to any of it. He's like kind of like just letting it all go by, and he's there to talk to Joel. And the two things that I really liked about this big scene is, one, you can't even drive by on the street, right? I mean, how does this place not get busted?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to get busted.
And two, I love how evidently you just go into the house, you put your money down, and then you go out in the yard and you play catch with all the other guys with a football, and then a girl just comes out and calls your name like you're in a doctor's office, and they're like, okay, it's your turn now. And I think that's awesome. I love that part of it. It's like, you don't stand inside and, talk to a girl and really, try to pick out the one that you really like. It's no, you slap your money down inside, go out, wait your turn, and then head on into the house.
I assume that's how brothels operate. I don't
Yeah,
know. We should try one out just for research.
Sure. Yep. I'll get right on that. Yeah, for sure.
All right. So now where are we? So then they have the interview. He has the interview with the guy from Princeton, and you listen to those credentials that he has, and it's like they're not even that good. It's like his GPA is 3.14, which isn't terrible, but it's like Princeton.
No,
Come on.
No, not for Princeton.
And then all of that and everything, and then obviously the interview is just a disaster because there's all this stuff going on, and then there's the famous scene where he just like has his sunglasses on and he goes, "Looks like the University of Illinois."
Right.
Yep. And then he holds that shot for like, it seems like a bit too long, but it's adds to the humor of that moment.
Well, and that whole, how bad it goes, and then we hear his GPA and how low it is. I mean, this is the point they're making too, I think, is just the privilege this kid has due to parents and money, and he can screw up in every imaginable way, and yet he's still going to get in. And, that's just the way the world works. You got money, you got your connections, and you get in. And this kid doesn't deserve it in any way. Even before he's through the party, he doesn't deserve to get into Princeton.
I think the other reason he got in was, the recruiter had a pretty good time.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
Well,
the guy doesn't go home.
Out.
Right.
That's what I was saying. Lana knew that he had a need here, and so she set it up.
The recruiter is not just willing to go take advantage of that situation. He overlooks it all and even brings the kid in, like, "Oh, you're great. You're a Princeton man." It's like, okay.
Right. Well, and here's two other things that kind of pissed me off about Lana. So while he's in this interview, she's continually coming into the room, bringing in a fold-up bed. Does this couch fold out? Like, we need the space. Like, she's just like, she knows he's in there trying to do this interview. And then, and she's kind of, trying to torpedo it. And then when his parents call, he's trying to talk to his parents and just get him off the phone. He can handle this. This is no problem. But she's like in his ear the whole time telling him, "I want to go have sex on a real train. Like, let's go take a ride on a real, like, just give him 2 seconds, woman." So he get his parents off the phone. Like, she kind of drove me nuts through this movie.
So let's get to the train then.
Yes, sir.
Here we are at the train.
You got Phil Collins playing, and then the dream music comes back in. And so the thing I remember the scene, but I remember, thinking this is such a steamy scene and R-rated, but there is no nudity. It's all just based on the
insinuation.
It's not actually that much that really happens in this scene here compared to the first scene in the movie, where that's much more.
Right.
But even that, as far as nudity goes,
it,
there's really nothing. There's not a whole lot in this movie.
No.
Earlier there is on the stairway and when she comes into the kitchen.
I'm sorry, Pete. I was watching it on a VHS tape. I couldn't.
I
think you might have missed some of that first scene because it's got a lot going on.
You might want to go back, but
I don't think it's going to make any difference. I don't think.
And the fact that there isn't, though, the fact that there isn't on this scene, that's what makes it even more erotic in a way.
You could say.
And so it was a brilliant, just the build up to it, and they're waiting for people to get off the train. And then finally everybody except this one guy,
pervert,
this pervert just watching him.
He doesn't even know what he's doing.
Like he's just drunk or stoned or something, and then they eventually get him off the train, which he had to hurry because those train stops don't last very long. He had to get him off the train, get him propped up, and run back on the train. That would have been my luck. I would have been in that situation and just missed, and the doors would close. I would never see her again.
Right, but that's a great part. that is a great part of that scene, is him just looking at this guy and just the single camera on the guy sitting there, and was he eating some stuff one time, and then he was like maybe taking a little drink or something, and Joel just cannot concentrate on the girl, and it's just great how he just runs him off, gets him on the platform and hustles back in. It's just I really thought that was pretty good.
So
The one other memory I had of this movie after this was the egg flying through the air when he's getting the stuff back there and the woman throws it. I could totally picture that part too. And that's another like, sweaty part, like, oh my God, is he gonna catch it and what's gonna happen? And then he does, and it still isn't good enough because the mom sees
catches it like a football. But they never explained. I mean, did it crack at that moment, or did it crack somewhere in all of the other things? They never really identified in the movie when it cracked for sure. You assume that it happened when he was trying to catch it like a football, but
so he ends up making no profit at the end of this. I mean, he gets his dad's car back, which obviously was huge. But he can't pocket any of the money because Guido stole everything out of his house. Again, getting back to the security of this home and not locking things up like you need to when you got Guido the killer pimp coming after you. So he's got to sit there and buy back all of the stuff that's in the house and able to get it moved in just in time, before his parents come home.
Speaking of Guido, I did want to back up about halfway through the movie to a scene. I don't know if I'm sure you guys didn't pick up on this, but there's a scene when Guido first comes to the house. He identifies it, and he's standing in a driveway talking to Joel, Tom Cruise, and Joel is standing there, and he looks just like Napoleon Dynamite, sitting there listening to Guido talk and threaten him and all this stuff. The way that Tom Cruise is standing there, go back and watch the scene. I promise you'll see what I'm talking about. It's like he's just standing there like with his head forward a little bit, and that's what stood out to me. It's Tom Cruise, I get it, and he looks like Napoleon Dynamite.
Like you should have picked this movie for your nerd movie draft, Pete.
I should have, but that was what I thought of. Go back and watch it, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
I just remember him rocking the cut-off jean shorts in that scene.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Another thing the last thing I have here, to go back to what Gifford, how you were complaining about Lana because she kept interrupting and everything. I think that's the contrast. She, this kid has everything and it's all just handed to him and everything's going to work out for him in the end. She's the hooker who has nothing. And so she doesn't give a shit about him going to Princeton. She doesn't give, and it's that contrast where she's like the opposite of him. And you'd look at it and think, why wouldn't she just let him be for a few minutes? But it's because she doesn't care. That's not her life. They're two completely different lives. And that's the priority.
And that's kind of my point too. It's like everybody just takes what they want from the kid while he's trying to hustle. And that is the point of the movie too. It's him moving from this, sheltered existence, trying to do the right things with his grades and having the extracurriculars and everything like that to, no, we're like you said in the beginning, just say what the fuck, and we're just going to go for it.
And what the life that he is forced to lead versus the life that he wants to lead. That's what the conflict is here.
In the 80s, what do you expect this kid's going to do? He's going to grow up and he's going to take advantage of everybody around him now and be just probably a total asshole as an adult.
Well, and if he gets that MBA from Harvard, he'll make a whopping $40,000 right out of college.
What a different time.
Right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think that's equivalent to about 175 now. So that's a nice way to start.
As a starting, yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Take that.
Yeah, I would.
I enjoyed that movie. I thought what I love about this movie is it's just so different. Like I'm glad you brought up right away, Pete, how it's hard to define the genre because it's its own thing. It's so different from so many other movies that you would think it's similar to. And going back and watching it again with the music and it's just its own thing, and I love that. It makes it very unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
Shall we dive into our draft for the night? Are you guys ready? Are you prepared for this?
As prepared as I can be.
I have a list.
Yeah. I'm a little concerned at doing this list, Pete, because I feel like it's a window into our
psyche,
own personal things that we enjoy. So that could be something there. So anyway, let's get into it. We got Pete with his episode. He'll go first. I got the second pick, and Brad will bring up the rear, as it were, in the Steamiest episodes.
Just to explain, we are talking about the steamiest scenes in any media. So I think most of us pick movies for the most.
In honor of the train scene, right? Rebecca De Mornay and Tom Cruise. It's a very steamy movie, so let's just go for it.
Let's go for it, man.
Well,
we're gonna go for it, honey.
I'm going to go with the obvious. I am going to take the Risky Business train scene for my number one overall pick.
See, now, after watching the movie, I wouldn't pick that one. I would pick the original scene from when she first comes in the house. I feel that one is far beyond, after not knowing going in, because I don't remember it, but after watching, I'm like, wow, that scene's actually a lot more risque.
But that one's still on the board.
This is one too. Hold on. That's where it depends on what your definition. You could go many different ways with this. And like I said, I feel that the train scene was more erotic in a way.
Yes.
Because it was just more sensual.
Sure.
Okay.
So much
and if you pick a movie like that, it doesn't mean the movie's out, I guess, huh? Like we could pick another scene from the same movie.
It's scenes. Yep. It's like picking songs. We're not picking an album here. So again, I'm going to take a movie where there's a million scenes that you could choose from. I'm going to go with Basic Instinct, and I'm going to go with the interrogation scene. This one's so steamy that Newman was literally sweating bullets during this scene, and of course, it has the iconic legs crossing shot in it as well. So I'm going that route.
So I don't necessarily have as many specific scenes as you guys. Like I can tell you what happened in the movie and like generally where it was, but it might not be defined quite as much as that. But I'm going to start with one of my all-time favorite movies, and Gifford's going to agree because we brought it up a couple episodes ago, and it's got George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, and there's a hotel scene that leads into a trunk scene that is, in my opinion, I guess if you're calling it the sexiest scenes, this is the cream of the crop between the two actors and the way it's played and the dialogue. Because there is a little bit of stuff in the hotel part, but like in the trunk, there's no sex or anything. They're just talking. So I'm taking Out of Sight from 1998.
You want to hear a fun story?
What's that?
So I'm doing research on this last night. I come across all these lists, a lot of, and again, there's a lot of things on the lists that I saw, and I don't know the movie, so I'm not going to include it here. I'm sure the scenes that they're referring to are super hot, but I haven't seen them. But I came across Out of Sight on the list last night, so I started watching Out of Sight last night, finished it about a half an hour before we jumped on today.
Oh, wow. And was it just awesome too?
The actors, oh my God, I forgot Michael Keaton was in that movie.
Yeah, he's great.
He's awesome. Right at the end, Samuel L. Jackson comes in. Viola Davis has a bit part. The actors in this movie are amazing. And I can't get enough of Steve Zahn. I love Steve Zahn.
Oh, he's great.
He's awesome. Ving Rhames. I mean, God, the cast is top.
I'm re-adding that to my watch list.
It is so good. It's on Amazon Prime right now.
Oh, really? Great. Actually, I think I have the DVD anyway, but
it's so good. Great pick. I would have, So you're going to take both scenes on that one. I would go with the hotel because it's so well shot between going from the room to the bar to the room to the bar.
Yeah, and that's really the main one, but I just think you got to mention the trunk too.
Yep. And again, a scene, absolutely zero nudity.
Yep.
It doesn't need to be nudity for it to be steamy.
One of my favorites, as we go to my pick, is a movie that we did do. It was one of your choices, I believe, Gifford, that we have done an episode on. I'm talking about it's actually an action sequence in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Okay. I love that scene.
The fight / sex scene.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. I have that on my list. It's highlighted. Again?
Which part is it?
Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's kind of towards the end of the movie. It's where it's a fight / sex scene where they're fighting against each other, but they're also right? Yes, and it's like
I was
really
of
wild.
Like dance part at first, but I remember the house part.
The dance part is awfully
good too, but
But your scene, Pete, is the one that I have marked down.
Yeah.
That is so hot. All right. Well, I'm going to take one from a movie that we also covered from 1989. I'm going Roadhouse, and it's the scene where Dalton and Doc in his little unair conditioned loft, they consummate their relationship.
Can't go wrong with Roadhouse ever.
No.
Hey,
and there's a few
I thought you were
scenes from
talking
that
about
one.
the steamy polar bear that fell.
Between what's the guy's name? Tiny or something? Yeah, and the polar bear. That was pretty steamy.
I'm going to
Not
take
expecting that.
one that I thought about taking first because I didn't know. I'm sure you guys have seen the movie, and I didn't know if you looked at lists and saw it on there.
Mhm.
This is another one of the most steamy scenes ever made, and it's Diane Lane in Unfaithful, where she finally succumbs to the cheating.
I put the bathroom scene.
And well, yeah, there's more than one, but
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a sexy woman and a woman, because she's what, like 40 years old or
Mhm.
more in that movie. And
Yeah.
speaking of Tom Cruise and The Outsiders, she's in The Outsiders too.
Oh yeah.
Basically, as a kid, she's another great,
Mhm.
like long-term actor.
Yes, she is. That's a great pick.
Thank you.
Brad, I think you're going to like this pick, and based on what you said, it's probably not on your list. I'm branching off here. I'm going away from movies for a moment. I have the video for Wicked Game.
Ooh.
Ah, yes. Once you told us it could be other than movies, I knew obviously that was the first thing that came to.
Smoking.
So I added it to my list immediately.
Yep. Okay. I am going with a movie with Mickey Rourke and Kim Basinger. I'm going 9.5 Weeks, the blindfold and ice cube scene from 9.5 Weeks.
I couldn't pick that one because I've never seen that. So,
oh, yes, sir.
Between that and like Body Heat, I knew there's a
Yep.
couple really big ones that I've never seen them though. So,
well, again, 9.5 Weeks. There's more scenes than just that one, obviously, but that's the one I'm gonna zero in on.
All right, I'm gonna take another movie that I just love so much, but this introduced us to a actress that we all love, and another just beautiful looking couple, Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek in Desperado.
Mm-hmm.
They first get to.
Yes, she is one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen in my life in that movie.
If I had made my top five, my list of five,
yes,
she's on my list.
Yes, and
like
she
they did
should
on
be.
Friends. Yep.
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't seen her recently, maybe though. But all right, I am going with.
She wouldn't pick you anyway at this point, so.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's like, well, I don't know if she makes it anymore.
I'm gonna say no. That. All right, I am going with Wolf of Wall Street.
Which scene?
Mainly the one where she is sitting on the in the living room floor. I guess you could call it a living room in front of the couch. That's the one.
In the pink dress.
Okay. See, I was thinking when she
there's multiple ones
the
in
door,
that movie. Yeah,
completely naked and shows herself to him. I mean, that was like, wow.
That was pretty. Yeah. That was pretty hot. But I put
like,
down the.
Am I really seeing this right now?
I put down the pink dress scene out of Wolf of Wall Street because that was steamy, for sure. But yeah, it can't go wrong that way.
It had been a long time since I'd seen that movie, but that's one that I remember that way. So anyway.
Oh, right. Well, I'm going to go with, again, a movie you could take a few different scenes from, but I'm going to take the three-way in Wild Things.
Ah, yes, I have that down.
That's on my list, yes.
Everything was building up to that scene.
Yes.
All right, I am going to go with another one where I don't think there's any nudity in any of these that I have here, or anything like that. But I was always very intrigued, because I saw it when I was fairly young and everything. But the Pretty Woman scene where she's on the piano, I mean, Come on.
That's the scene. That's the one I have written down as well.
Well,
They had a good time there.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned that one to Courtney, and she's like, really? Because she's a prostitute, and it's like she's working for him. I'm like, she goes to him in that scene.
Yeah,
like
no,
he's
that's
hanging out in the bar, like by
and
the
it's
piano.
another one where it's the way it's shot. Like it's the filmmaking there that makes that scene even
and the
better.
piano notes.
it's classic.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the sound.
The piano notes
noise.
hit it. I was like, oh man, that is so good.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Pete.
All right. This is my last pick,
This
right?
is your last pick. We're going to laminate it after you make this pick.
This is going to be the best one, too. I promise you.
All right.
This one, I don't even need to narrow it down. In the movie, you're going to know exactly which scene that I'm talking about, and it is probably the most extended. I mean, anything that you're looking for, the scene has it. That's for sure. I am talking about Team America World Police.
You know, right before you said it, has anything you're looking for. I was like, wait, is he going to Team America?
Oh my
That's
God.
definitely an interesting definition of steamy.
Yes.
There's even something steaming in that scene.
That was actually the joke that I was about to use, Brad, that I had written down. You got it.
All right. For my final pick, I'm going to go with one that has a rave review from one Mark Rosen, in which he said, Daddy's enjoying this. And that is when he saw Black Swan and the scene between Portman and Kunis.
I never knew where that soundbite came from. So
you know what? You know why he said it? He went to that movie with his daughter. And they're like, oh, buddy, like, really? Like, that had been uncomfortable. And he made the comment about Daddy's enjoying this.
All right. So I've got one left. Can't decide if I want to pick like my favorite movie on the list, or I have a music video, or actually I have the first one I listed here because we talked about it once on our show. And I was actually sure one of you would take this one.
There's so many good ones. That's the problem.
Let's see. I'm gonna take I'm gonna go off the board here. I'm gonna take the Fiona Apple video of Criminal.
Very good.
I'm gonna go and switch it up.
Yeah.
And I'll remember
a bad girl.
First came out, how many times I watched that over and over. It's such a great song too. It's like you couldn't turn it off. It's like this is so mesmerizing.
Yeah. We got any extras there, fellas?
Well, I got a bunch.
I got a couple.
Okay.
I'll just run down mine. I have the Cindy Crawford commercial, the original Diet Pepsi commercial. That one was the one that just like jumps out at you when you're like a 13-year-old kid, like we were, or whenever it was that it came out.
It was Super Bowl commercial, I think, right? About 89, 90 or somewhere.
Probably, yeah.
Can we throw in Kate Beckinsale's Diet Coke commercial as well? That was.
I don't think I know that one.
Oh, look it up. Pretty please.
I had Bull Durham. I had the bathtub scene.
That was my number one that I almost picked, and I couldn't believe you guys didn't pick it.
I just have the montage at the end with like 60-minute man. Yep.
So I was between Gone Girl, Bull Durham, and Fiona Apple, and I went with the most rare one that
Yep.
I was really wrestling at the end between Bull Durham and Team America World Police, and I had
tell you
Titanic.
who would have said that Bull Durham was number one and not been happy about it. My grandma.
Oh yeah, right. Yep. Exactly.
Remember that story?
I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go back to our Bull Durham episode, and you can get a good story about me and my grandma watching Bull Durham.
Granny ain't having it. Granny ain't enjoying this.
On my list, I had Titanic. There's a couple of scenes there with the artist.
Literally
scene where she's on a couch, and then in the car itself, it's actually steamy. I had the Fear roller coaster scene.
Yep.
Ghost, but that wasn't my favorite. I had on my list in case I needed it.
Sure.
When Harry Met Sally, the restaurant scene.
The orgasm, yes.
Yep. Eyes Wide Shut, and The Room.
The Room.
My God.
I couldn't take both The Room and Team America, though. That would have been just too much.
Would not be a good idea. One or the other.
Right.
All right, so you named several that I had here. I'm gonna throw in so maybe the person who would be number one on my personal laminated list right now is Ana de Armas. And Gifford, have you seen the movie Knock Knock with Keanu Reeves?
Yes.
Okay, so and she's done a lot of movies like that, but that's like the first one. It's like, oh my God.
Yes.
I had Basic Instinct, Risky Business. I would pick the Risky Business one. I already said the other one, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Fear. Oh, Bound. You had Black Swan, Bound with Gina Gershon and I forget who, Meg Tilly, right?
Yes.
That's a good one.
Jennifer Tilly.
Yep. There's a movie, I only saw it once, but my wife and I went to it in the movie theater. It's Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams. It's called Blue Valentine, and it was a very, very steamy movie.
That's the one I didn't have down. I've heard, there's all these lists have that one in there, but I've never seen it, so I didn't want to include it.
And then we've talked recently about Sydney Sweeney, who's very big now, and she's done lots of movies. But there was one called The Voyeurs, and that scene is like that's something else.
Fun.
Yeah. So that's all my list right there.
Excellent. Well, I got a couple more here. Movie that came out a few years ago, Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron. There's a very good scene between her and another like assassin. That was excellent. The Thomas Crown Affair with Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo. There's a great scene in her apartment they go back to. She was wearing a see-through dress at a party or something. I got Varsity Blues Whipped Cream Bikini.
Good choice.
Yes, I got the original American Pie with Nadia just, getting changed in Jim's room. I went Dirty Dancing, and the scene I took was the music montage where she's learning to dance, and they've got Penny there and Johnny Castle, and that was just a pretty hot scene, I thought. Let me see. I've also got Poison Ivy 3. Jamie Presley in a red dress and I believe a hot tub. That was a good one. In 1994, 7 movies came out with the name Emmanuel on it. And that had Krista Allen. You can pick any of those movies, just about any scene. And that
Krista
would be
Allen, who was on Days of Our Lives, but also is famously known as I Really Want to Squeeze Him in Liar Liar.
Liar Liar. Correct. So you can go just about anywhere there. There was Pete talked about television. There's so much television that you could go with for this. One that kind of stuck out to me was a show called Sex Life. That one was, a lot of scenes on every episode. That was pretty hot.
Shows. Nip Tuck was extremely risque back when that first came out. The other one I brought up once, it's actually more of a comedy show, but You're the Worst.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was the very first episode where they very first got together. That was a scene that was like, this is on TV. I was like blown away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah, it was a fun show.
TV's come a long ways.
Yes, it certainly has, for sure. So great topic, Pete. That was a lot of fun to put those lists together, mostly from memory, mind you.
Yes. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I'm sweating right now.
Are you now?
Proud of my list that I made here. I don't know about your guys'. I have 0 nudity in my list. I mean, I really went for the steaminess, and most of them, it's the attractiveness of both actors together that just make it like come off the screen like crazy.
I think I went the exact opposite way.
Does it count?
Even though there's a lot on my list that there is no nudity. But there's a lot on my list that you guys got to that I, would have ranked higher too. But
does it count if it's claymation?
Evidently it does.
Those were marionettes. They were clay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Hey, Gifford, who's the steamiest band of all time?
That would be Preacher Row.
That is right.
Yeah.
And you'll need a towel after listening to those guys.
Well, yeah. Well, and the pool boy will bring you one, so you're good.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you later.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
alone to fear. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.